Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Once again, thank you for having us. Thank you for this opportunity. Bardstown Bourbon is excited to partner with UK to provide this opportunity for both of us. The agenda, real quick, what we'll start out, do an introduction myself. We're going to show a short video of what Bardstown Bourbon Company is about. I'll speak to the business side, the origins of Bardstown Bourbon, since we are relatively new to the industry, starting in 2016. And then we'll get into how we manage a lot of our business on the technology side. And Roger will get into our open source SCADA software platform and how that really evolved and how that really integrates into our production process and how we control. So with that, thank you again. John Hargrove, real quick, Chief Operating Officer here, been in the industry 6-7 years now. I started out with Sazerac in Barton 1792, most recently as the Director of Distillation Operations and Master Distiller there. And then 4 years ago, I joined the Bardstown Bourbon Company to really ramp up operations to 1.5 to 7 million proof gallons. With that, I'm going to start off with a video, and then we'll go right into the presentation after that.
Welcome to the Bardstown Bourbon Company. We're a new blend of bourbon makers creating the modern, authentic bourbon experience. We honor the traditional art of making whiskey while creating some of the most exciting and innovative products. Set on 100 acres of active farmland in the heart of the bourbon capital of the world, we produce the highest quality Kentucky bourbon and whiskey, not only for ourselves, but also for some of the best brands in the world. The Bardstown Bourbon Company is the first Napa Valley style destination on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail to combine distilling, culinary, and beverage expertise to create what we call the modern bourbon experience. In a short period of time, we've become one of the most sophisticated and flexible whiskey distilleries in the country, producing over 40 different mash bills or recipes across the entire whiskey spectrum. To put this into perspective, most whiskey distilleries only make between 1 and 5 mash bills. We produce more than 40. Most importantly, we've applied all the knowledge gained by making custom whiskey for some of the best brands in the world, and we've used it to create our own products. Now, let's show you how we make whiskey. Our facility contains 2 custom-made continuous column 36-inch stills. Attached to those stills are 32 13,542-gallon fermenters and 2 12,500-gallon cookers. With this system, we can produce more than 300 barrels a day, making us one of the largest and most flexible whiskey distilleries in the United States, with a system specifically designed to allow us to produce more than 40-plus mash bills. Each mash bill, similar to a cooking recipe, has its own unique list of ingredients and processes used to create a particular type of whiskey or bourbon. We start with the grain. We source high-quality corn, rye, wheat, and barley for ourselves and our customers. These ingredients, at varying amounts, will have a major impact on the final flavor of the whiskey. The grains arrive by truck and are sorted, rigorously tested for quality, and then transported to our mill, where they're ground up. The ground grain is then sent into large 12,500-gallon cookers, where it is mixed with water and heat. These grains must be cooked at specific temperatures according to each mash bill. This important step releases the starches and sugars in the grain and prepares the mixture for the next step in the process, known as fermentation. When the grain is finished cooking, the mixture, also known as mash, is then cooled down and pumped from the cooker into one of our fermentation tanks. We then add yeast into the mash. Yeast is a naturally occurring fungus that converts sugar into alcohol. It can come in many forms, including powder and liquid. Once the yeast is added to the mash, it starts a chemical reaction. The yeast begins to eat the sugar released from the cooked grains and produces alcohol and carbon dioxide. Over the course of 72 hours, all of the sugar in the mash is converted into alcohol. When the process is complete, we produce beer, a giant fermenter full of 20 proof beer. Once the beer is pumped into the top of the still, it starts a gradual journey down the long column of the still. As the beer flows down, it moves across a series of 15 plates with 566 holes in them. At the same time the beer flows across these plates, hot steam rushes up to the bottom of the still. As the steam makes contact with the beer, the alcohol contained in the mixture begins to evaporate, turns to gas and rises to the top of the still, while the grain continues to flow to the bottom. The alcohol vapors are cooled and turned back into liquid. This liquid is then sent to our doubler. The doubler is a 500-gallon pot still that raises the proof of the whiskey distillate and continues to refine it. You'll notice that the doubler and many other portions of the still are made of copper. Copper creates a chemical reaction when it makes contact with the alcohol vapor and the whiskey distillate. This reaction removes sulfides and oils. The result is a cleaner and better tasting whiskey distillate. The leftover grain, also known as slop, falls to the bottom of the still and is pumped out to tanks behind the distillery, where local farmers pick it up 24 hours a day and take it to their farms to feed their cattle. Now let's explore the final steps in the whiskey making process, barreling. After the clear whiskey distillate leaves the doubler, it travels to the cistern room, where it's proofed down to entry proof, then pumped into barrels and taken to one of our many brick houses to begin the aging process. Over time, the barrel plays a major role in producing the color and flavor of the finished whiskey. Some say anywhere between 60 to 80% of the final flavor comes from the barrel. To make bourbon, the barrels must be made of new charred oak. The process of burning the wood in the barrel releases wood sugars, which produce flavors such as vanilla, caramel, or baking spices. We work with several barrel manufacturers known as cooperages to select the best barrels for ourselves and our customers. Once in the barrel, the clear whiskey distillate makes contact with the charred oak. Now it's Mother Nature's turn to help the whiskey making process along. Our barrels, stored in non-climate controlled brick houses, are open to the extreme temperature changes of our Bardstown, Kentucky climate. Very hot summers and cold winters are ideal for aging whiskey. As the temperature falls in the brick house, the barrels contract and push the whiskey out of the charred oak. When the temperature rises, the wood expands and pulls the whiskey back in. Over time, this constant push and pull in and out of the charred oak transfers the color and flavors into the whiskey. When the whiskey is finished aging, our team of distillery, culinary, and beverage experts work together to create the finest blends through research and tasting. We also select the best whiskeys for creating finishes. Finishing in whiskey takes place when aged whiskey, bourbon, or rye is placed in another barrel that was previously used for wine, beer, or another spirit. This secondary process imparts some of the flavors from these barrels into the whiskey. From collaborating with the best names in wine and spirits to producing exceptional blends, our products are as unique as the approach we take to making them. We call this the modern bourbon experience, and we're excited to share it with you.
All right, so hopefully that gives you a little snapshot about the whiskey bourbon process we have here at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. But also what's exciting, we're just more than a distillery. So we have a great beverage team, a great culinary team. So basically we have experts. We're a full Napa Valley, Napification, if you will, style destination. So we have a restaurant, we have a bar, so it's a full experience. So we like to think of ourselves more than just a distillery. So we really recruited the best talent, both in the beverage and culinary, alongside the distilling partner too. So if you guys haven't been out here, we'd love to have you out here sometime, especially hopefully, and we all, I can't wait for this COVID to be over with, but please come out and check us out sometime. Meet the team a little bit here. So Mark Irwin, he's our Chief Executive Officer and President. Myself, the Chief Operating Officer. Steve Nally's our Master Distiller, a Hall of Fame bourbon producer. He's 46 years in the industry. He got his feet wet at Maker's Mark when they were making 50 barrels a week. Roger Henley, our plant engineer, who will be getting on here pretty soon. Nick Smith, our head distiller, got his feet wet at Beam. Sam Montgomery, our national brand ambassador, and then Dan Calloway, our vice president of hospitality. So that kind of represents each department and each parts of the business here. So tell you a little bit about the business as a whole. So we started in 2016 at a 1.5 million proof gallon capacity. So how did we start? We started as a new make, putting product for us at 8% of our capacity in the warehouse. And then we sold our production facility and collaborated with other distillers And that's what's really we've been able to leverage to produce those 40 plus mash bills. So 2016, we were making 25,000 barrels a year. We were completely sold out in capacity. 2017, we doubled, completely sold out capacity before it even opened at 3 million proof gallons a year at 50,000 barrels. And then 2018, we doubled capacity again to 6 million proof gallons a year, roughly 100,000. And 2019, we went to 7 million proof gallons. And this year, we're on track to do 7.3 million proof gallons a year. So what's really unique about this is most distilleries have 4 to 6 mash bills. We just top 50 actually as of yesterday. That's anything between 2, 3, 4, 5 grain bourbons, rye whiskey, American single malt, grain in whiskey, weeded whiskey. So we do about 125 changeovers on the recipe side a year, making us one of the most flexible, if not the most flexible distillery out there to really meet the needs of the co-manufacturing space in the industry. We house everything we make here on site. We have 7 active warehouses with a capacity over 250,000 barrels. Once it's all said and done, we'll have 14 warehouses with over 500,000 barrel capacity on site. So currently we're going through a lot of construction. We're in the process of building 3 other warehouses on top of our 7 right now, with plans to build out all the way to 14 warehouses. So Roger is going to play a part here in a minute and really going over how we handle all these recipe changeovers and what kind of system we have that allows us to do that while keeping the integrity of the product and meeting certain KPIs in the production process for our 32 customers in this program. So what do we do with all this bourbon that we make for other customers? Here are some of the brands that we produce for. So everything, if you're a Jefferson's fan, Western Calumet, Straight Edge, High West, Western Bird Dog, Kentucky Owl, Nelson Bell Mead, Chicken Cock. So we make numerous brands out of those 50 plus mash bills and James E. Pepper 1776 that we help produce and supplement their production. What really drove that is the bourbon boom. Companies needed to decide whether they wanted to invest their own capital and spend their cash flow in increasing their capabilities and their capacity, or did they want to hedge and lean on a co-manufacturer such as us that really offered something nobody did back in 2016, which was custom manufacturing on the distillation side. Sure, there was MGP, sure, there was bulk stocks available, but you could only really get in certain recipes, 21% rye bourbon, 36% rye bourbon. We were first distillery to really offer what we do in the industry as far as complete customization from grain procurement, mashing procedures, fermentation procedures, yeast strands, how we run distillation columns that we have, and what barrels, what cooperages we work with. We work with 9 different cooperages, and everything in between all the way to aging is customizable at our facility. So a lot of these brands were able to come on board, work hand in hand with our head distiller, master distiller, Roger Henley, myself, to really not only meet a brand that's already out there on the market, and so consumers can tell a difference, but also we also help create brands for new customers that are coming on the market. So the technical capability we had to have and really evolve had to support the needs of the industry. We're ever evolving. We haven't stopped production or construction, since 2013. And so it'll be well over a decade since the beginning, when construction finally ceases and we can focus purely on production. So how we've done that, I know we'll talk about the technology, but team is the number one. Hiring the right talent, getting the right people, going into the internship space. So there's a lot to be said about technology we have here, but one thing we really won't go into detail is the human capital element of it. I don't believe anybody else could do this. We have built really a world-class team with really diverse backgrounds, different schools and colleges coming all together to really build this company. And this is what Roger's going to touch on, is ignition. So I won't get too much into it, but this allows us to be the most technically advanced distillery in the nation. What I will touch on is some of our brands, just to give you a little bit more of a history of how we're producing for other people while focusing on growing our brand and our go-to-market strategy with some of our recipes that are coming up on harvest. So some of our products that you may have seen out there on the market, which we're in 12 different states, plus DC currently with plans to go to all 50 states by 2023 here in 3 years. So we have 3 expressions, 3 categories, you will, in our portfolio. One's a Fusion Series. This really allows us to showcase product that's been produced here at a younger age, so 2, 3, 4 years, while blending it with older stocks. So any 5, 10, 13, 15-year bourbons. It allows us to put Bardstown Bourbon Company juice out on the market and really showcase our capabilities in quality, but we understand that it's young. We understand the quality of it, so that's why we supplement and we blend with older stocks to really get it out there. And I'll go over some of the awards we've won with our Fusion, but it's some of the best product out there on the market. Blending, we think, is the next big thing in this industry, so we're really proud that we've come up with our Fusion Series. We just released our Fusion 3, and we just blended our Fusion 4, so you can see how far in the future we're already working on product development and blends. Discovery Series, what that represents is our capability of just strictly blending. So we go out and purchase bulk bourbon, different stocks of bourbon from different distilleries, from brokers out on the open market, and really showcases our ability to blend here. So we have different blends of that 10, 11, 12, 13, 15-year-old bourbons. We have Discovery Series number 1, 2, 3, getting ready to release number 4 here in December. So that really showcases that blending, and it doesn't have any of our juice. So that is an older cask strength release that's a really mature, balanced bourbon in that expression. The Collaborative Series is a really neat series. This is Bardstown Bourbon. The team, the master distiller, Steve, the head distiller, Nick Smith, partnering with another distillery, winery, brewer, and really making something unique. So we take bulk product, in most of our cases, 12, 13-year Tennessee, but also an MGP product, and then we put our own unique spin on it. So that's different finishes, beer finishes, wine finishes, such as Cabernet Sauvignon, very Zinfandel forward, strengthened, balanced with petite Syrahs, Armagnac finishes, rum finishes, cognac finishes. What makes us so unique with finishes out there on the market is we finish for such a long period of time. Our shortest finish is 18 months in the barrel with these used barrels, all the way to our oldest, which is 40 months in the barrel, which is very unique in this space because not a lot of people finish for so long. And what we do, we have a very robust and focus on quality and how we procure these barrels and work with other artists in their craft. So let's use wine as an example. We work with a winery. When they harvest, they go to pull a barrel. At the time of dumping a barrel, we instruct them to leave the dregs in. We put inert gas in it to evacuate all the oxygen. We seal it, refrigerate it, and overnight it to the distillery, where we fill a live unload and fill it with whiskey to keep the integrity of that previous product in the barrel. So that's a short little history and where we're going on our product side. And the other unique evolution of that is how our product is evolving. So you can see with our Discovery 3, our Fusion 3, how the packaging is evolving. So this is what you'll see out on the shelves here in Kentucky going forward. So here's a little snapshot of what a Fusion 3 blend looks like. We're very transparent, and that's not only in the architectural of the facility, but it's also down to the bottle, down to what we offer our clients. Everything is transparent, from analytical packages, production packages, to finished good packaging, where we actually show the breakdown of the blend on the side of the label. So when you go to the store, you buy a Bardstown Bourbon label, and you're contemplating to buy it, turn it over, you can see exactly the breakdown by ratio, by origin, by age, and by mash bill. We're the first ones to do that in the industry. As consumers become more and more educated about bourbon, they want to know where it comes from. We think that's great, right? We're going to reach a lot more people in this world. There's a big drive around. People want to know what they're eating. People want to know what they're drinking. So we offer that across the board in our Fusion and Discovery series. So this is the Fusion number 3. It's a 40% 13-year product that's not produced at the Bardstown Bourbon Company that we procured. So you can see it's an 18% rye bourbon at 13 years, 18% at 20% wheat at 3 years, and 42% at 36% rye, or the 36% rye bourbon. So 60% of that product was produced here at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. and it has done well. This actually last year, the Fusion #1 won 11th best whiskey in the world on Whiskey Advocates top whiskeys. And then we'll go over the golds it won at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. This is the one that I highlighted with our blending capabilities, called Discovery Series #3. It's a blend of straight bourbon whiskeys. And just like the Fusion, the breakdown is on the side of the bottle. So it's a 45% Indiana 13-year, 21% rye, 18% 13-year rye bourbon at 32%, and 13% rye at 10-year at 23%. So very robust, rich. The tannins are in there, the caramels, and there's not a lot of bright notes where you would see in younger bourbons, but a very well-developed blend of bourbons. And this is the collaborative series. So this is our Orange Curacao Distillare. So we partnered with Copper and Kings out of Louisville, which is a brandy distiller, and we took some of their Orange Curacao barrels and we aged it in Tennessee barrels for 18 months. It was a 9-year Tennessee bourbon that we aged for 18 months in Copper and Kings American Brandy Company. That Distillare Orange Curacao, very long finish, but a very high corn, high sweet base bourbon that went into that. And this is what we've seen so far and how we've had the market react to it and some of the awards these have won. So we submitted 6 products to the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. All of them have won a gold or double gold, and won our collaborative series with Susan Viper Pavitt Winery in the bottom left. It actually won best in class as best finished product, a whiskey category. So we're very proud. That's actually the only competition we entered so far in 4 years, just to give us a gut check to see where we were at. And we were pretty ecstatic as a team here at Bardstown Bourbon Company. We don't make these bourbons. We don't focus on the quality for awards, but it was kind of nice, a nice supplemental result for our hard work that manifested itself into some golds, double golds, and best in class across the board. So you can see that Fusion #1 was Whiskey Advocates 11 on its list, and #5 best bourbon in the world. Hospitality. So just like I said, distillery is a huge part of the business. So is hospitality, visitor experience. So we have several tours, from shaken and stirred cocktail classes to honey spot thieving, where we take you into a barrel warehouse. You get to taste right out of the barrel, some honey barrels, if you've heard that term, and really a really immersive experience across the Bardstown Bourbon Company's property. And then from distillate to barrel, which you can go online and book any of these, which really takes you, we start in a classroom tasting distillate, tasting maturate, tasting blends, and take you all the way to the warehouse also. What's really exciting, which we just came online with, is a vintage library we have here on site. So we work with Fred Minnick, Bill Thomas, and we have curated one of the most extensive collections of vintage whiskey and bourbon out there in the United States right now. So we have everything from 1892 Cedarbrook being our oldest bourbon, all the way to some new Kentucky Owls that are no longer out there on the market, and everything in between. So pre-Prohibition, Prohibition samples with the distilleries that were still running during Prohibition for medicinal use, and then post-Prohibition. And you can come here, you can book this space, you can have a dinner in there, and we actually allow you to drink from the bottles per ounce. We have everything from a $6 pour Old Charter to a $2,500 an ounce pour Pappy Van Winkle 1974 16-year Family Reserve, one of the most rare Pappy Van Winkles. So we have something for everybody there. So at the end of this, please, you'll have our website information. Get online, look at what we offer on the tour side, the vintage library side, and then our visitors experience totally. But if you don't feel comfortable coming down in person, we also offer a complete virtual tour online. This is an amazing experience. You can get on and look at the 360 tour. So this is how are we adapting from a hospitality standpoint and really engaging consumers out there during the most recent event. So we have a virtual tour where you can actually walk through virtually the whole distillery and see the whole process. Everything that you just saw on that video, you can click on. It gives you an experience from grain in to barreling out in the warehouse and everything in between. The restaurant, the the welcome center, so you can really see everything from the comfort of your home and behind your computer. What this means for us, what we try to do at the end of the day is engage consumers, and we really want to engage that turnover into bottle sales, right? So at the end of the day, we are a business. We want to get people used to our brand. We wanted to fall in love with our brand and visit us virtually, visit us physically, and really know what Bardstown Bourbon represents and who we are as a company. And we want to be known for the great team we have here, the great quality products we have here. So with that, that's a little bit of the business background, a little bit of our story, how we manage 50+ mash bills, how we manage 125 recipe changeovers, how we really are keeping to that ethos of transparency here at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. We have to have a system that supports all that. We work with some of the largest spirits producers in the world to some of the largest craft producers in the world. So these are very technically advanced organizations that we have to give analytical data as far as chemistry is concerned, production data. They need to see a snapshot of their full production. And one of our systems that we have, our main system, is Ignition. So I'm going to introduce Roger Henley here. He's BBC's plant engineer. He's been in the industry for a while now. He comes from Sazerac also as a plant engineer at Barton 1792 facility. He's been here 3 years now. He's came on and really built this system from the ground up. Probably, I'm guessing, it has 800 to 900 programming hours, over 1,600 tags feeding data back to this. But you'll really get to see the manifestation of data collection and mining that we have here at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. So with that, Roger, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey, everyone. Before we go any further, does anyone have any questions up to this point before we dive into the technology aspect of the business? That's good.
And we'll have a Q&A session at the end. We'll stay on here a little bit.
I just know that was a lot. So I don't have any questions. We just threw a lot of stuff at you. Now I'm going to throw a lot more at you. But yeah, at the end, we'll have another Q&A session. Anyway, because we have so many mash bills and so many customers, we have to have high flexibility and tight control of our processes. And to maintain that tight control, I've chosen Ignition as our HMI/SCADA software suite. It's much more than that. It also is an MES system, but at its basic core level, it's an HMI SCADA system. And it provides the operators with an interface to the machines and the processes within their work areas, but it also provides real-time data collection of recipes, mashes, distillation, and process data. But like I said, it's also an MES, so the system can fully track and document the transformation of raw materials into finished goods, not just to the barrel, but post-barrel into the bottling arena. So we are currently under construction. We're building a 57,000 square foot bottling facility. We'll show you that at the end. But Ignition will also be involved in that. There are 5 key work areas within the distillery that we're going to focus on. It's grain operations, mashing, cooking operations, lab analysis, distillation, and processing. We'll stick with those 5 for now, and I thought it would be helpful for us to move through the distillation process from raw materials to barrel goods. I know we already saw it in the video, but I'd like to move through it and show you how Ignition specifically interacts with all those pieces to provide us with the information that we need to make some of the best distillate in the world. Our OT, Operational Technology Network, is moderately complex, a series of switches that are ran on that REP redundant network, fiber network. We house 2 servers. One server runs in primary ignition, the other server runs a secondary ignition, and then there is a database also. We got 2 VMs on each server. One is a primary ignition, the other's a backup database, and then the other one's vice versa. With that, we're also connected to 5 Allen Bradley PLCs out in the field. which are connected to various VFDs, flow meter sensors, and transmitters to control our processes. The we use, and like I say, the main software that we use is Ignition. Ignition kind of sets on top of everything else. We have our database software, which collects all of our production data. All that information is facilitated through Ignition, and it's the same with the PLC network. The PLC network is programmed in ladder logic and function block diagrams, but the Ignition block sits on top of that and takes that and translates it into usable information data for the operator, not only for the operator, but for those downstream to collect data for, in an MES sort of sense.
And I'll just walk you through the process here real quick, what you're looking at. So this is one of those HMI screens out on the production floor. So you can see the cage mill, our milled grain bins, which are on volumetric scales that feed both of our mash tons out there. They're both 12,500 gallons in capacity. So what a typical day looks like, we go through 10 of those cooks. Each of those cooks are 23,800 pounds of grain. Processing in each one of those, they approximately take 4.8 hours each. So we go through 10, 5 in each cook a day. It processes through a heat exchanger called a mash cooler to get down to set temp in our fermenters. We have 32 open atmospheric fermentation vessels here at Bardstown Bourbon Company. So that allows us to have 3 or 4 recipes loaded up on the production floor at any given time, which after 3 days feeds a beer well, goes to distillation, and then goes to aging, which Roger is going to dig deeper into each part of the process here.
So so the trucks bring in our whole grains. Our whole grains are housed in one of 5 bins. The bins have radar level transmitters on top of them that give us the total weight, or if you prefer in bushels, it will also give you the total bushels. But we mechanically convey off these whole grain bins through a cage mill. Out of the cage mill, we pneumatically convey that flour, that milled grain, into one of 3 scale bins. And those scale bins, the specific weights of the scale bins are how we move specific quantities of grain, whether it be corn, malt, rye, wheat, whatever grain it may be, into our mash tubs. So from these scale bins, we move into our mash tubs. And the mashing sequence, we have 2 mash tubs. You guys heard this. You heard all this in the introduction video. But this particular screen is what controls our mashing process. It looks kind of convoluted at first, but it's not. It's pretty simple. On the far left-hand side, you have mash tub 1. On the far right-hand side, you have mash tub 2. And in the middle, you have the grain conveyance system, which feeds the mash tubs. So the mash tub operator uses this screen and controls this entire process.
And what Ignition allows you to do also is to set up work instructions in there. So when we do have a recipe changeover, you can build schedules in this, and it'll automatically pop up and really alert the operator of the recipe changeover and give a step-by-step procedural guideline on how to cook, what's automated, what's manual. So it's for any operator to come in, we can train within a matter of days to have them be able to operating on a full-fledged system such as this.
One of the nice things about this is it takes a couple days to learn, but after that, everything is very, very laid out on the screen for you, so it allows the operators to focus on the process and help us determine the best ways of doing things. All their time is not spent worried about the process, because all that information is set right in front of them. Anyway, out of the mash cookers, we send about every 5 hours, we send a cook through the mash cooler. The mash cooler, what we're doing there is we're trying to reach a specific set temperature into our fermenters, and that set temperature is based on recipe. Okay, so our fermentation tanks are set up into quads. We have fill lines per 4 mash tubs, or per 4 fermentation tanks. And we have a total of 8 quads. This is how they convey the liquid, the mash, out of the cookers into the fermenters.
And so I'll just explain for those who aren't familiar with the bourbon whiskey production process up to this point. We take the whole grain, we grind it up. We really want to get to that starch content of each of the grains. For corn, roughly averages about 72%. So we really want to be able to take that and convert that into fermentable sugars, which are your 1, 2, 3 molecule sugars. And that's what yeast feed off of. So we grind it up, we're able to get to that starch content, and then we break it down in the cooking process and extract flavors in the cooking process. And then fermentation, sole process is flavor development through yeast consuming those 1, 2, 3 molecule sugars and making alcohol and obviously some other byproducts with it. So up to that point, that's where this mash, and then we go through a 3-day fermentation with ignition, being able to provide back a lot of feedback how that fermentation is actually going through that 72 hours.
Yeah, it's imperative that we maintain specific temperatures throughout the fermentation process. And to combat the exothermic reaction that takes place with the yeast, we use RTDs and control valves to circulate chill water through tube jackets in our fermentation tanks to keep everything at the temperature we want, so that we have our fermentation work out in something close to 72 hours. But the exact drop times aren't really determined by the clock. They're really determined by the lab analysis. We look at pH, acids. We look at ballings, and those are the 3 keys that we look at before we decide when we want to drop it up.
Right, but we like to stay around that 72 hour, and then back design the inputs to make sure that basically when we drop, we're at terminal on our sugars, right? We don't want any sugar left over, and we want as much alcohol, which is usually anywhere between 8 to 10% in those 12,500 gallon vats of mash. So you can see on the HPLC what we measure 1 through 9. So we can see lactic acid, acetic acid, along that correlates with the pH, and then we measure total tartaric acids to really see if bacteria is causing any issues. It's a really good indicator of fermentation, and then how good conversion was really. So we can measure long chain starch molecules down to that glucose, fructose, maltose, and such. And then on the distillery side, distillate side, that's when we really utilize the mass spec gas chromatograph. But also we have a whole organoleptic sensory team here, great lab team that measures all this. And all this information is actually uploaded into Ignition also. So not only is up to this point is your milling operation, your mashing operation, your fermentation, production metrics, all those are captured in Ignition, but we're putting the analytical data associated with that. So when we pour a barrel in 10 years, and it's a really good barrel or it's a mediocre barrel, we have all the metrics that we can really do a root cause analysis of why that whiskey is so good up to this point. So all this information, even the sensory, the human subjective element, is loaded up at that point. So we know the lab rated this on a quantitative level, the 1 through 5 Seagram's rating scale, that'll be in Ignition. So at the touch of a button, we can get a report after 10 years of that production process that happened 10 years ago when it was distilled.
And this is just an example of the fermentation data that we collect. Looks like we have set data, 24-hour and 48-hour data here. So we grab data points every 24 hours on our fermentation, and it just shows you what our temps are, our ballings, our acids, our pHs.
So this is what's known as our 24-hour wet chemistry. Basically, what I touched on the slide before, just indicators that we need to keep an eye on, and we do that through Ignition also as far as data collection.
And once the fermentation process is complete, what we have, we no longer have mash, we have beer. And
it's where I insert my joke. We don't quit. This is where brewers usually quit. We take it one step farther.
Yeah, so we have a beer here somewhere between 8 and 10 ABV, and we take that, we drop it into a beer well, which feeds our two 36-inch diameter column stills. So those column stills need to be continuously fed. So we just use the beer wells intermediary tank to allow us to continuously run into our distillation columns.
So I'll just run you through the process for anybody not familiar with distillation. So we feed the beer after 72 hours of fermentation, passes through the first heat exchanger called a beer preheater. What happens here is we take the heat vapor, the vapor coming off the top of the stills, transfer that heat to the beer somewhere around 180 degrees. It enters the 15th tray of the still and then zigzags back and forth while that live steam is going up through, and as let's say ethanol, 173 degrees Fahrenheit boiling point. As different alcohols, aldehydes reach their boiling point, that vapor velocity increases and pushes all that vapor up through the top of the still, through the beer heater, all the way to our low wine condenser, where we use water to condense it back down to a liquid. But we can selectively do that, and you'll see on the next screen, Roger will walk you through that.
You see all of these the stills are basically boiled down into 6 critical control points. If you can maintain these 6 critical control points within each still, you can make good whiskey, or for what we believe to be good whiskey. And it starts with, on the far left-hand side there, what you're looking at here is the controls for still 1 and still 2. This is kind of just a down and dirty. This is how everything actually operates. There's nothing fancy about this. On the left-hand side, the far left-hand side, you have the beer feed rate. That has to remain very consistent. If your beer feed rate doesn't remain very consistent, then the entire process gets messed up. So these actually are all PID loops, and they're all completely dependent on the loop before them. So the second loop is the beer bottoms. We need to maintain a specific level of beer bottoms to keep the steam pushing up at a consistent rate. Then the still steam, that's the temperature that we want to maintain on the still to produce the proof that we're shooting for. And that proof is determined by the mash bill, the recipe. And then from there, like John said, it drops out into the low wine condenser. The low wine condenser condenses the vapor back down into a liquid. That liquid moves into a small intermediary tank and then falls, then gravity feeds down into our 2 doublers, which are just little pot still tanks. So they're sort of like pot stills. But what they do is they just evaporate a little more of the water off and refine the product a little more, so you end up with a little higher proof. And that's the 4th control point, which is the doubler steam. That's controlling the temperature on the vapor side of the doubler. And then the other 2 are like we talked about, the low wine and the high wine condensers. Those are just the points at which the alcohol gets condensed back down into liquid version. And
so that allows us to selectively condense what we want to put back down into a liquid, or what we want to send out the vent to atmosphere. So we have a control loop that's tied to the incoming water, the incoming valve position, and is tied into the temperature of that product coming out in liquid state. And it all feeds back to the system and controls it automatically to keep a steady, consistent product temperature, to know we're condensing the stuff that we need to back down into a liquid and venting what doesn't need to be condensed out to atmosphere.
You can see on the screens here the actual beer feed. Like if you look over to the far left-hand side of still 1, the beer feed, you can see the actual beer feed is running at, when I took this picture, it was running at 45.73 GPMs, and the set point is 45.5. So it'll jump around the set point. As long as I can maintain a specific range, everything's cool with that. So it's the same. If you look down through there, you'll notice they're all within a pretty tight tolerance.
You want to go about a tuning?
Yeah. So I'm constantly tuning these loops, trying to hit, trying to get these things to run the best that I can. Every once in a while, the operators come back to me and say, "Hey, listen, our low wine condensers seem to be getting away from us." So that time I'll go in and spend 2 or 3 hours. Usually, it usually takes quite a while because they're such slow-moving loops to tune that stuff in. This is just more of the distillation process. As you show another shot of the still. So from the stills, we end up in a high winds tank, which is just a small intermediary tank that has a pump at the bottom of it. That pump pumps the distillate over into our cistern room, and our cistern room contains 9,000 gallon tanks. And in those 9,000 gallon tanks, what we do is it usually takes about 4 fermenters worth of beer to make one fermenter tank, or I'm sorry, to make one cistern tank. And if you'll see at the bottom there, this is SBID. That's the super batch ID. So throughout this entire process, as this thing hit the mash tub, it started. Go ahead and go to the recipe. So this screen right here boils that entire process down to one very quickly seen scenario here. So you can see that we've got specific recipes that are called batches that are in our mash tubs. They move one of two mash tubs. They move to one of 32 fermenters, and you see it tracks this entire process all the way through the system into the distillation columns, all the way to the cistern tanks. So we know specifically how much grain, what the feed rate was, what the vapor temperature was off the stills, what the vapor temperature was off the doubler for any given recipe. So taking that information plus the information that we get from the HPLC and the gas chromatograph, what we're hoping to do is marry that information and use machine learning to. We're not doing this at this point. This is something I'm hoping to do in the future. To use machine learning to understand the distillation criteria, which creates the best, sweetest taste profiles. Of course, that's a very subjective thing, but it's something that we're interested in doing.
But at the same time, how this communicates to other parts of the business is, one, for those 32 customers, we can provide all this feedback, that ignition, all this data. We can customize report packages, what our customers want to see very quickly, and they get a snapshot, and they get basically a real-time audit of how their production went at the Bardstown Bourbon Company if they weren't here on site. So they can see all the analytical lab results, they can see the key performance indicators, but it also talks to our finance department too, where it basically can talk to our ERP system. So if we need to pull up a report, how much money do we have in the system tied up in raw materials right now? It can pull how much grain's out on the floor, how much grain's in the bin, and tie that back into a financial report also. So Ignition, very robust. It just doesn't do a great job at collecting data, but also we can help it mine that data and talk and transform that data to where it can help other departments within our business currently.
Yeah, essentially, if we have any problems or issues with any of the processes that are contained within distillation, we have the ability to go back to historical data and determine root cause, and also make adjustments on the fly as needed. That's a huge benefit to us for sure. This is just another example of our system. So we used to do CIP, which stands for clean in place. We used to have to clean in place once every 14 days. And myself and the distillery manager decided that we wanted to create a automated system to take care of all of the clean in place activities. So we implemented this system. We went from it taking over 7 hours to run a clean in place to it now taking less than 3.5 hours to run a CIP. So it's a huge difference. That means that's 3.5 additional hours that we have at distillation at 45, 50 GPM. Per still. It equates to a significant amount of production increase.
Impacts the bottom line. Just a great example how as we evolve, our processes evolve, Ignition can evolve and support that evolution. And here's one more project.
Here's another project that I'm working on. This will be a fermenter drop project. Right now, all of the dropping of the fermenter to the beer well is all manual process, and I'm going to turn it into an automated process that the operators will be able to control from their interfaces.
All right, so next, the evolution of Bardstown Bourbon, we touched on it. Roger touched on it on a 50,000 plus square foot facility. we're going to have 2 bottling lines. So we'll be a one-stop destination for our customers, everything from whiskey manufacturing, whiskey storage to come June 1st of 2021. We're going to be able to take those barrels, dump them on site, and fill them in your custom bottles. So not only from a production standpoint, we're a one-stop shop, hospitality, we are too. So I think we're doing good on time. I know we sped through that, and there was a lot of information thrown at you. But if you were to take anything away from this about the Bardstown Bourbon Company, one, we push innovation. We balance the art and science of distillation production. Collaboration. We love working with other people in the industry, whether that's beer makers, winemakers, distillers, cooperages, and then the transparency piece. Like I said, from the architecture of the building to come tour, we don't show you one spot and do something else out back. You get to see firsthand everything that we're doing up front. And then if you're a customer on our program, you actually get to see the whole production, the metrics, the data to support your production. So innovation, collaboration, transparency are really the core values of Bardstown Bourbon. And we're always expanding on how to really push the envelope in each of those categories and make the experience for the visitor and our customers each and every day. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions at this point. Sarah, I think we're at a good time now. If you want to hop off, that concludes our presentation at this point. We're going to stick around for how long it takes and take questions, and we can talk through some of the information that was provided to you today. And once again, Sarah, thank you and your team for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Yes. Sorry, Roger, people might have had questions earlier, but they weren't able to unmute themselves, so I'm about to let them do that. Yeah, I know it's close to the 6:30 mark, so real quick for those of you who might need to leave, I will be sending out some surveys via email in the next few days to those of you who signed the Google form or emailed me for the link to this event. So please be on the lookout for those, and I will send out this Zoom recording as well. So if you need to leave, once again, thank you from us as well for joining us. And I'll stick around for a little bit, and you should be able to unmute yourselves now.
Yes, question.
Hi, Beth. Yeah.
Hi. So first of all, that was really interesting. I've been to some of the distilleries here, and I've also been spent some time on Islay over in Scotland and seen that. And to see what you guys are doing, the range of mash bills, that's amazing. But my question is not about the technology, as interesting as I find that. How big is your culinary team? And are they coming up with pairings for all of those different bourbons you're creating?
So great question. We have a huge culinary team now, 30 plus. We have a total of 128 employees, and the distillery side only makes up about 48. The rest is culinary, beverage, and hospitality team. So we're investing in that area very largely. As you know, we're on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail that boasts over 1.5 million visitors. So we want to spend just as much focus, time, and attention on the culinary side as we do the distillery, and make that experience as transparent, as collaborative as we do too. So with that, we do pairings with a lot. Not every single mash bill. We really do it with our internal expressions that we're coming out with. But if you were to come on site, we have specific tastings with pairings from appetizers to main courses to sitting in our vintage library, having BBC made chocolate, caramel popcorn, brittle, peanut brittle that we match with different maturates in the aging process, while we explain the different flavors and the different years and the different recipes. So the short answer is yes, we do a lot of pairing. Do we do all of our recipes? We'd need a much bigger culinary team to keep up with that, I think. So great question, though. Thank you, Beth.
I will definitely be coming out. No question about that.
We'd love to have you.
Hello, I have a question.
Yes.
Two questions, I guess. So I have a fermentation background, but no alcohol experience whatsoever. I'm in a completely different area of fermentation, but I thought your system is really cool. And so I was wondering, the two questions. One is, you have a very automated system, and it looks beautiful. But what happens when something goes wrong in the fermentation and you only have a few, it looked like a few of, I don't know what you called them, the wells or something that it goes to after fermentation before the distillation. And so do you have to send some, like to keep everything going at that point? Do you have to send some for disposal to just keep it all going when something goes wrong? So I guess that was my question about the automation and when something, either the fermentation doesn't work or you know, something breaks. And then related to that, from your distillation, maybe it doesn't matter because we're so rural in Kentucky, but I know that some places that are in cities have problems with their air quality permits for what goes out the top of their distillation. Do you have to collect or condense like at another level later for air quality, or is it not so much and it's okay? So,
Yeah, two great questions. I'll touch on the fermentation question first. So there's a lot of pre-production that goes into this, and we've had, knock on wood, a lot of success with fermentation, but we are set up mechanically in case a fermentation goes bad. We can isolate it, whether we still want to distill it, recover the alcohol there, or whether we want to get a vacuum truck in here and get that fermentation outside of the facility itself. So we have a very, I don't want to say redundant system, but we have a very flexible system so we can keep the process going in the case a fermentation does go bad. And most of the time what we'll do is we'll isolate it, we'll isolate the beer well, we'll ferment it, we'll give it a rating, whether it's acceptable on 1 through 5, 1's a reject, 2, it's very poor quality, and maybe we can blend it off in the future depending on how aging goes. Aging can cover up a lot of sins in fermentation, but as you know, as a fermentation specialist, fermentations can go bad and we can get rid of them mechanically here. Second question, air permitting. Yes, we have very strict standards on air permitting, obviously, with the state and federal guidelines associated with that. So we do measure and condense what comes out the top of the vents in the low line condensers, and just all the VOCs, volatile organic compounds that are measured for each warehouse. We have theoretical calculations, obviously, on those to where we have to keep our permit and put live data into that permit to keep us permitted on an annual basis with surprise audits from the state to support our permit also. So we have a very robust program. One thing I didn't mention is we are one of the only distilleries in Kentucky that's food safety certified, HACCP certified through NSF right now. And we're about 70% ready to do our ISO 9001, 22000 certifications, which are on document control and food safety certifications, which allow us to make a food safe product and stay within a lot of those critical limits of those control guidelines, whether they be federal or state or municipal at that point. So hopefully that answered both your questions. Great questions.
it did. Thank you very much. Very impressive and great to see you doing all that. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. First of all, thank you all for taking the time to give this presentation. 2 questions are, do you all hire computer science type applicants? And within that, what sort of technical skills do you look for in that area? And the second question is, when you drink bourbon, are you going old fashioned? Are you going straight? What's your all's preference there?
Great question. So I would say when we look to hire somebody, we've hired, like I said, a lot of different degrees here. We've hired straight out of college to industry veterans and everybody in between. So we don't really look at the technological experience you have. We can teach a lot of that. We want to get to know you, your work attitude, and your applicability of what you learned in your school. So if you're computer science, information technology, what do you bring to the board or the organization that we can help really leverage your expertise? We want to hire you for you to tell us how to improve a process, right? And then we can teach you the nuances of the technology that we're running and really give you that base to really set you off on a good start here at the Bardstown Bourbon Company. So we don't necessarily look for a certain background. We do look if you have the tools in your kit to really land on your feet here. And then on the job training, we do a lot of it here. And we look at it as a good thing, right? But really diverse schools as far as where people went to college at. And there's going to be lots of opportunities. Like I said, with this bottling, we're going to have 30 positions opening up here between now and June. So a lot of opportunity at Bardstown Bourbon Company. Second, barrel aged old fashioned all day, every day here. We make a great one. if you guys stop by, we have barrel aged Manhattans also, or it's not fancy, bourbon and Sprite sometimes for me personally. I know a lot of people would cringe at that, but I'm a truist. So I'm not going to tell you I drink it some way and I don't, but for me, it's old fashioned. Roger, I don't know.
Fusion. I like our Fusion product is exceptional with a single piece of ice.
Perfect. So he's a straight 3 fingers sort of guy.
Glad to hear it. Thank you all.
Yeah.
That prompted another question from me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead, Beth.
You mentioned interns early on. In what areas do you take interns?
So we're just getting that. We're working with UK actually right now to get that internship program going, and we're really developing right now with the School of Engineering, and we're just not looking at engineering. Obviously, there would be information technology opportunities, what that looks like. So with feedback, we're open to feedback. If you guys, Beth, if you have idea, the last slide here has my information. Any additional questions, please reach out to me and let me know. But depending on where you at in your education journey, we really want to tailor where your interests are and really formulate a really robust, transparent internship that's tailored to what you're passionate about. So
I can say that we are currently working with a group of University of Kentucky students on their capstone project. We're working with them to have them help us figure out the best way to re-gauge whiskey when it comes in from the warehouses to be bottled. So that's a little project we got going with UK engineering students.
Cool. Well, I teach in the strategic communication program here in the college, so mine are more marketing communication kind of students, but I'll shoot you an email.
yeah, nice. We welcome it. Thank you. All right, anybody else?
I have a question. Since you were talking about internships, I'm in the College of Agriculture and the College of Business, so I don't really have a technology background, but I'm interested in like human resources. Do you all think that you would get your internship program?
Well, yeah, it'd be applicable to any department, and don't let that discourage you. I have a business degree. My head distiller is agriculture economics. So when I say we really look for people who are passionate about something, and we can teach you the stuff that you weren't taught in school, we can help you out. So don't let that discourage you. If you're in agriculture and you're in business right now, absolutely, we'd look at you if you're passionate about being an HR professional in an HR career. So I grew up in Missouri, went to the University of Missouri, went to business school, worked for PepsiCo under 12 different food manufacturing, and I ended up being a master distiller at 1792 and now working at Bardstown Bourbon. So 10 years ago, you wouldn't have told me I would have been in this position right now. So.
Yeah, I'm actually from Bardstown, so I've been to the restaurant. So I'm
Awesome.
a big fan.
Awesome. Thank you, Savannah. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you guys so much again for taking the time and stuff. I'm interested on the back end of Ignition. Is it a certain programming language that you're using, or does Ignition have its own kind of like interface that's hooking up and connecting those things for you?
Stephen, Roger just stepped out. I'm not going to pretend I know something about what I don't know, but that's out of my expertise. But once he walks right back in here, I'll have you repeat that question.
Okay, sounds great.
It's a different language from when I see him programming. I can tell you that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, anybody else? Like I said, if he's not back in time, Stephen, please feel free to email us. Both our emails.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he'll go more in depth to where he'll probably wear you out, actually.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? All right. There's no more questions, Stephen. We're going to follow up with you.
Yeah, no worries. I'll shoot you an email. That works.
And I just want to say thank you again. Actually, he's walking in here right now, Stephen, so you're going to get your answer now. Stephen has a question for you on the backside of programming. Okay, Stephen.
Yeah, I was just kind of curious. When you're working with Ignition, is it based through, like is Ignition's interface just like I'm assuming it's not just touch and play. So I was kind of curious on what like coding language or what you might use to put together those commands.
So Ignition was written in Java.
Okay.
The scripting language is kind of a mix between Java and Python, or they call it Jython.
Mm-hmm.
It's very intuitive. It's if you know Python or Java, you can figure out the other. It's an extremely user-friendly interface. You can script just about you can customize just about every facet of the program. So, and that's all done through scripting, and which is, it's called Jython. That's what they call it.
He took the words right out of my mouth, Stephen. I was about to explain all that to you before he walked in.
That works. I really appreciate you guys taking the time, and just super interesting stuff you're doing over there.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, last invite. We welcome you guys to come or join our virtual experience online. And once again, for Bardstown Bourbon, Roger and I, thank you very much for having us tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks again, Sarah. Cheers. Everybody have a great night.